We're doing a Think Aloud on resistance training adaptations. Look at the title to see if we can figure out what this chapter is going to be about. The first word, resistance, root word resist, means to withstand the action of whatever is applying the action. Training often refers to learning how to do something that you are unaccustomed to. And then lastly, adaptations, root word is adapt, which is to change in response to an environment or stimulus. So what this title indicates is that we will be learning about changing to meet the demands of resisting a physical action. Judging by the doctoral degrees of the authors, I would predict that their level of expertise in the field would lead them to use language that is highly academic and disciplinary specific. So be ready for that challenge. As clients embark on resistance training programs, their bodies respond in several notable ways. This chapter examines the physiological adaptations that occur with resistance training, both during acute bouts of training and over time. So just after reading the first two sentences, we confirmed that our prediction was correct. But first we have to break down the word physiological. So the first part of the word is similar to physical. So we can assume that it has to do with a physical response or adaptation. So from that, this chapter examines the physiological or physical adaptations that occur with resistance training, both during acute, I'm not sure what this word means, bouts of training and over time. So the word acute needs some digesting. In other academic areas such as math, it would mean a rather sharp or small angle, but looking at it through a scientific discipline lens, it's referring to a short frame of time. So during short bouts of training and over time. So as you read through the sentence, it actually hints that this is a longer period of time and this is a short period of time. So personal trainers who understand these adaptations can design resistance training programs that will best meet clients' individuals' needs. Such personal trainers have a keen sense of how to train each physiological system with the client's personal goals in mind. So from this, I can predict that the rest of this chapter will discuss various aspects of understanding and manipulating adaptations so that that knowledge can be applied in the field. This chapter explains general adaptations that result from progressive overload. There's two words here, over and load. Looking at the word overload, it is easy to determine that it is a load that is greater than normal, and if we relate it back to our understanding of the word adaptations, then we can assume that this overload is what is causing the body to change. These include neurological, muscle and connective tissue, skeletal, metabolic, hormonal, cardiorespiratory, and body composition changes. This sentence is really dense with academic language, so let's dissect the words and read it again. Let's look at the root word for neurological, which is neuro, which reminds me of the word neuron, which I know relates to the brain and its communication system. Therefore, I know that one of the adaptations is a change to the communication channel between the brain and the muscle itself. The next word that may be struggling with is the word metabolic, which sounds very familiar to the word metabolism, which refers to the body's process of utilizing food and hormones. Uh, Cardiorespiratory, there's another big word. Let's break that down. Root word cardio, another one respiratory. So cardio refers to the process and components of the heart. Respiratory or respiration is the exchange of gases in the lungs. So I know that adaptations that will occur from acute bouts of exercise will affect both my heart and my breathing. And body composition changes. As with all types of exercise training, resistance training is highly specific, so we examine particular areas of resistance training specificity. We also explain the impact of gender, age, and genetics on physiological adaptations. The final sections of the chapter deal with overtraining as an unwanted physiological response that must be prevented in the personal training setting, as well as the effects of detraining and how to avoid them. So going back, the final sections of this chapter deal with overtraining, which, if we dissect this word, obviously means that we are training too much, above and beyond, as an unwanted physiological response that must be prevented in the personal training setting, as well as the effects of detraining, whichever we think of D as a negative, such as desensitizing, and how to avoid them. So to clarify, detraining refers to a loss of all of your previously conducted training. So, basic adaptations to resistance training. The heading of this section leads me to predict that we'll be learning about some simplified versions of adaptations based off of this word right there. And that later on in this chapter we'll be learning more complex concepts revolving around resistance training adaptations. So, in studying the adaptations to resistance training, it is useful to distinguish between acute and chronic adaptations. So I've heard these two words used together before, and maybe that'll allow me to make sense of them. Acute and chronic are typically used in reference to diseases. An acute disease is one that is short-lived, and a chronic disease is one that's persistent, long-lived, and possibly incurable. So we can predict that acute adaptations are short-lived, chronic adaptations are long-lived. We'll have to read further for some answers on that. Okay. Acute adaptations, which are often referred to as responses to exercise, are the changes that occur in the body during and shortly after an exercise bout. So after reading further, we find that our prediction was not entirely correct. While acute adaptations are short-lived, like we predicted, another part of that definition is that they occur during and shortly after adaptations.